Once again, so glad to be with you today. Jenny came up to me just a minute ago, my wife, and she said, you know, it was nice to welcome Tracy Taylor into our church, but I think it was Tracy Turner that was joining our church. We have a Tracy Taylor and a Tracy Turner, so Tracy Taylor, you're still a member here. And Tracy Turner, welcome in. So thank you. Sorry about that. That's not the first time or the last, right? Yeah. If you've been with us over this past 3 weeks, we've been in a series called Rock Solid, 5 Lessons from the Life of Simon Peter. And I don't know about you, I absolutely love biography. I love it in book form. I love the show biography. Really anything where you can see somebody from their birth to their death, all the high points, all the low points, all the things that we can learn from. And so this has really been a biographical series about maybe the most fascinating character in the New Testament other than Jesus, a guy by the name of Simon Peter. And really we've been seeing this arc of Peter's life from the moment that Jesus Christ met this very simple fisherman. He had a lot of bad habits, a lot of bad attitudes, but on the day that Jesus met him and said, you know what, I know all about you, I'm going to turn you into a rock. I'm going to build in you a rock solid faith. From that moment till Peter's death was this amazing journey of God taking him and changing him and using him. And so really the point of this series for all of us is how God will take you from where you are at today and how he wants to build in you this rock solid faith. So I want to begin our time together with kind of an odd question, all right? I want to just survey the congregation here. How many of you have ever had surgery? Okay? I'm talking tonsillectomy, minor, major. You've ever gone under the knife? Everybody who's had that, raise your hand up high. All right, that's probably most of us, right? So we all have that kind of in common, that common denominator of having had surgery. And isn't everything for a day or two leading up to the moment when they put you out for surgery, isn't it just a whole series of uncomfortable moments? It's uncomfortable filling out all the stuff and arriving at 5 a.m. a lot of the time. It's uncomfortable when they hook you up to the IV. It's uncomfortable when they put you in that little robe with the gap in the back. Right? It's uncomfortable when they put those weird little socks on you. I still have mine. I wear them around the house. Jenny hates them. Right? It's all the swabs and all the stuff, it's all uncomfortable. And it gets maybe the most uncomfortable just before the surgery when they come with that stack of 10, 15, 20 page papers and they ask you to give your consent, right? They ask you to sign off that you won't hold them liable for all the what ifs that could happen from that surgery. Now here's the thing, I get that. We're living in a society with a lot of litigation, a lot of lawsuits, and so the hospitals, the doctors, all those folks are trying to cover themselves. I mean, we see that on television with the commercials for medication, don't we? When they give it with some medication, whatever it's going to do, like this will help your shoulder, but here's what might happen to you if you take it. Right? There's always that piece. I printed out, I won't mention the medication because you might be on it, but this particular medication is for depression, very famous one for depression, even for fibromyalgia, for some other stuff. And it says, all these beautiful things this thing can do for you, this depression medication, but it says, while taking this, you may experience. I got 6 pages here. Chronic trouble sleeping, constipation, dizziness, drowsiness, dry mouth, excessive sweating, loss of appetite, low energy, blurred vision, feeling agitated, feeling anxious, feeling weak, gas, involuntary quivering, sensation of spinning or whirling, yawning, giant hives, inflammation of blood vessels in the skin, mild degree of mania. I didn't even think you could have a mild degree of mania. I believe it's mania, it's pretty major. Abnormal manner of walking, bad breath, bruising, burping, dry eyes, easily angered or annoyed, lockjaw, painful red, right? It's almost like I'd rather have the depression. All the stuff that might happen to you. It's comical almost, the list of things that might happen. But let me tell you when it's not comical. It's not comical when it's a major surgery. It's no laughing matter when you're going under for a life or death scenario. And that's when the moments after signing those forms can be awfully tentative. It can feel a little like suicide. Signing those papers and say whatever is going to happen is going to happen. Well, here's the thing is we've been watching this character, Simon Peter. Jesus has done these amazing things. He meets him and he says, I'm not only going to give you a brand new nickname, I'm going to change your identity. I'm going to change your destiny. Peter, I want to use you in these amazing ways. You're going to do far more than you ever thought possible. I'm going to do it through you. And I think that's why he was so shocked last week when Peter gets a terrible diagnosis. Jesus Christ himself tells Peter, Simon, you've got a form of spiritual cancer inside. You've got this disease inside of you called self-centeredness, self-pity, selfishness. There's 1,001 descriptions. He said, but you got this spiritual cancer inside of you. And listen, if it stays there, it's only going to grow. And here's what it's going to do. It's going to kill your love for me and your love for people. So Simon, here's the thing. Do you have an amazing identity? Yes. Do you have a great destiny? Yes. Can I use you? Yes. But I've got to do some surgery on you, Simon. I've got to deal with that self. I've got to deal with that spiritual cancer if you're going to follow me. And friend, if you've followed Christ for any time at all, he will say the same thing to you. Here's how Jesus said it in Matthew 16:24. Then said Jesus to his disciples, his followers, then and now, if any of you wants to be my follower, you must give up your own way. One translation says, deny yourself. Take up your cross and follow me. If you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. But if you give your life for my sake, you'll save it. And it's almost as if Jesus has laid down the consent form in front of Peter. Peter, I want you to trust me with your life. I know you have a preferred destination. I know you've got dreams. I know you think you know how your life ought to go. But I'm telling you, I see deeper than that. I see the thing that will kill you in the end. I want to deal with it, but I want you to give me your permission to deal with it. I want you to give me your consent. I want you to say, Lord, not my will, but your will be done. And friends, I got to tell you, I think for so many of us, we come to these moments in life where it's almost like that movie Groundhog Day, like we just seem to be stuck. We keep coming back to the same bad habit, the same wrong attitude, the same broken relationship, the same strained marriages, the same, right? We're saved, we're Christians, and all these years ago we had this vision of what we could be, and now it seems like we're stuck. And I'm telling you, so much of the time, it is Jesus saying, I'm asking for your consent. There's something down inside of you, deeper than the surface. You can't deal with it, but I can deal with it. And I'm asking you to release that grip on your way, your dreams, your life. And let me do for you what only I can do. Well, Peter did. I don't think he ever verbally said. I think the closest to that we have is a moment in the Gospels when all these so-called disciples are leaving Jesus like crazy because it wasn't going the way they wanted it to. And Jesus is sitting there watching while all these people that claim to love him and claim to follow him, life didn't turn out like they want. He did stuff that didn't make any sense to them. He said some things that hurt them and offended them. And so they're walking away by the dozen. And Jesus turns to his disciples and said, will you also go away? And Peter says, Lord, where would we go? We believe you're the Son of God and you have the words of eternal life. And it was like right then he was saying, here's my consent, Lord. What happens after that? How is Jesus going to deal with this thing in all of us that will kill our love for God, that will hijack our love for people, that will choke out our marriages, that will ruin our communities? How is Jesus going to deal with that? One of my favorite books is by a guy named A.W. Tozer called The Pursuit of God. And it's a deep, deep, deep book. But Tozer's talking about the fact that when you invite Christ to do a work in you that you can't do for yourself, here's what he says. Let us never forget that such a truth as this cannot be learned by rote. You can't just learn it and memorize it as one would learn the facts of physical science. They must be experienced before we can really know them. The ancient curse, self, will not go out painlessly. The tough old miser within us will not lie down and be obedient to our command. He must be torn out of our heart like a plant from the soil. He must be extracted in agony and blood like a tooth from the jaw. He must be expelled from our soul by violence as Christ expelled the money changers from the temple. 5 lessons from the life of Simon Peter. Lesson 1, Jesus can change your name. You can accept him as your Savior and he'll give you a new identity and a new destiny. Lesson 2, Jesus will call you up. He'll call you to a life beyond your resources. He's not calling for you to give just the best you can. He wants to do the best he can through you. Last week we saw Jesus will call you out. He will lay his finger on that thing in your life that's keeping you from a rock-solid faith. And today's, listen, it feels like the opposite of an encouraging, hopeful message. But I'm telling you, this is the road that gets us there. And this is true for everyone who truly follows Jesus. And if you're in the middle of suffering and you're a Christian right now, if you're suffering physical disease or ailment or pain, if you're suffering in strained relationships, if you're suffering from some attitude or habit that just beats you again and again, I love that Brad up here, hey, I'm in a struggle, man, I'm in a fight. A lot of you are in a fight. All of us are in some fight. Jesus will take you low. He will do surgery on that thing that's threatening your love for God and man. If you have your Bible this morning, turn to Luke 22. Luke 22, verse number 24. We're going to get this text on the screens if you don't have your Bible. Luke 22, 24. Now let me set the scene while you're turning. This is the last night of Jesus' earthly life. Okay, the next day they're going to take him and crucify him. And so he's gathered in an upper room with his disciples, and they're eating this particular little Jewish meal called the Passover, where they are commemorating the fact that God brought them out of Egyptian bondage thousands of years before under Moses. It's this really intimate, beautiful meal. And a lot of times we see pictures of the Last Supper, and they're all like sitting in straight back chairs, and Judas is kind of off at the side, like real sneaky like. That's not how it was at all. Okay? In that culture, you didn't sit in a straight back chair. You reclined. You leaned on an arm on a pillow. Very, very intimate. An entire table of people all, when it says that John laid his head on Jesus' chest, that's what it means. It doesn't mean he was in a straight back chair like this. It means they were all down here and John was closest to him. So they eat this meal, and Jesus actually takes it as this teaching moment, and he says, listen, this cup you're drinking, this wine, is my blood that's about to be shed for all of you. This bread you're taking and eating, that's my flesh that's about to be broken for you. I'm going to die on a cross for you. And that led them to this. Verse 24. A dispute also arose among them as to which of them would be regarded as the greatest. What? Jesus just said he's going to die this horrible death for all of you. He just washed your feet in another gospel, and their conversation is, I think when Jesus comes into his kingdom, I'm going to be higher than you. I'm going to be bigger than you. I'm going to be better than you. I feel like I'm going to be really in charge. And look what Jesus says. And he said to them, the kings of the Gentiles, the people who don't even know me, exercise lordship over their people, and those in authority over them are called benefactors. But not so with you. Rather, let the greatest among you become as the youngest, and the leader as one who serves. For who's the greater, one who reclines at table or one who serves? Is it not the one who reclines at table? But I am among you as the one who serves. He says, fellas, I'm coming to set up a whole new thing. I don't want to turn you into a domineering, self-centered, egotistical dictator. I want to turn you into somebody like me, a servant. But friends, do you see? Self. It can literally sun itself in the shadow of the cross. Self, that terrible motive that hijacks every good thing you do. Listen, there's no way to get rid of it. It's too subtle. It's too powerful. You can't expel it. You can't pray it out. You can't wish it out. Don't we see in ourselves a little dirt in every tear? In every good thing we do, there's that selfish motivation. There's that desire to get ahead. There's that I'll only scratch your back if you scratch mine mentality. And we find it in church circles like crazy. Men and women of God who stand up here and preach to congregations every week can be so filled with ego. We can build our little kingdom, and we see examples of it all the time. Jesus said, guys, don't you see the spiritual cancer in you? If you're going to follow me, I got to deal with that. And then he turns his attention to Simon Peter. Wow. How many of you still with me? Say amen. Verse 31. Simon, Simon, behold, listen, Satan demanded to have you, that he may sift you like wheat. But I have prayed for you that your faith may not fail. And when you have turned again, strengthen your brothers. And Peter's devastated. What? Peter said to him, Lord, I'm ready to go with you both to prison and to death. You think I'm going to be one who walks away from you? Listen, whatever you're telling me is inside of me, it ain't that deep and it ain't that bad. I'm staying with you all the way. And Jesus said, I tell you, Peter, the rooster will not crow this day until you deny 3 times that you know me. Satan has demanded to have you that he can sift you like wheat. I think in our culture, sift you like wheat is a fairly vague idea, but understand, back in that day when they sifted wheat, they would take this threshing type box, okay? They would place the wheat in this box and they would shake it violently till the chaff fell through, the garbage fell through. They were after the kernel. They wanted the kernel. They wanted the good stuff. All the garbage falls through and the good stuff stays. Satan, the enemy, this fallen angel, he said, has asked permission, Peter, to shake you hard. Because here's the deal. He doesn't believe you have a real faith. When you read the book of Job, Satan, the enemy, has this low opinion of mankind. Do you remember the scene in Job? We believe the oldest book in the Bible. I mean, it dates back so far. And in this book of Job, the devil comes before God and says, hey, I see your servant Job down there. You've blessed him in all these ways. That's why he follows you, by the way. Why don't you let me take away his possessions? Why don't you let me touch him in his body and make him sick? Why don't you let me take his kids from him? And here's what you'll find out. He didn't have any faith in you. He's like a dog. You feed him so he comes up to you for more food. Take away what he has and you'll find out how much he loves you. And Satan's saying the same thing about Peter. Let me shake him hard. And you'll find out real quick, there's nothing there. And this is the part that always shocks me. Satan has demanded to have you that he may sift you as wheat. And we expect to read, and I told him never. But that's not what he says. He says, I've prayed for you that when you get turned back around, your faith won't fail and you'll strengthen your brothers. What was Jesus saying? Satan demanded to shake your life hard, and I'm going to let him. I'm going to let him. But when he shakes you hard, Peter, I'm going to make sure that grain of wheat stays put. I'm going to make sure your faith stays put. I'm not doing this to destroy you. I'm doing this to save your life. I'm not doing this because I don't love you. I'm doing this because you got a spiritual cancer inside, and I've got to deal with it if you're going to follow me. And Peter's scandalized, like, I don't need that, Lord. I'm already for you. And he says, you don't even know. You don't even know. Peter, tonight you're going to deny, you're going to tell everybody I don't even know him. 3 times before the rooster crows. Friends, this has come real hard for me to learn, and I don't think I've fully learned this yet. But I will tell you, we human beings are filled, when it comes to God, with why questions. Why? 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 Why would he let my loved one get cancer? Why would he let that child get killed? Why would people, when we go to Uganda and see the suffering there, why, God? Why, God? Why? And I got to be honest with you, I don't think this side of heaven will ever get all of our answers. But what I do know is when it comes to this surgery to deal with self in your life, Jesus will use the events, relationships, and circumstances of your life to do surgery on that spiritual cancer inside of you. He will use the hardships you go through to shake out self and build your faith. You know, I've had a lot of friends, I've had a lot of people I've met who claim to be atheists. And all the conversations I've had, and I'm never dismissive of that, I always want to hear their story. And I'm telling you, this may not be universally true, but it's universally true in my experience. 100% of the time, the people I know that are atheists are people who are very angry at God. Because it didn't go the way they thought it should have gone. And how could a good God do that? A good God is about to let Peter's life get shaken hard. Look to Luke 22:47. We're going to read a long section here. Now they've come out of the upper room. They've crossed the little brook Kidron at the eastern gate of Jerusalem. And they've gone up into a garden that I believe the disciples and Jesus frequented, called the Garden of Gethsemane. And Jesus has gone there and he's praying. And he's praying so intensely because he knows he's about to get shaken hard. He knows he's going to the cross, and he's praying so intensely, he's sweating blood, hematidrosis, a rupturing of the vessels in his forehead. And Lord, I don't want to God, I don't want to do this. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. And there in the garden, and Judas shows up with the soldiers. Verse 47. While he was yet speaking, there came a crowd, and the man called Judas, one of the 12, was leading them. And he drew near to Jesus to kiss him. But Jesus said to him, Judas, would you betray the Son of Man with a kiss? And when those who were around him saw what would follow, they said, Lord, shall we strike with a sword? And one of them struck the servant of the high priest and cut off his right ear. This gospel doesn't tell us, John's gospel does. It's Peter. It's Peter. You think I won't die with you? You think I won't stand with you? Watch this. I'm going to take this guy's head off, and they're going to kill me right here and now. And I'm going to show everybody who I'm with and who I am. And he takes out his sword. He's a fisherman, not a soldier. And he swings his sword, and he doesn't cut off his head, but he does cut off his ear. Peter's made his stand. Verse 51, but Jesus said, no more of this. And he touched his ear and healed him. Then Jesus said to the chief priests and officers of the temple and elders who had come out against him, have you come out against me as robbers with swords and clubs? When I was with you day after day in the temple, you didn't lay hands on me, but this is your hour and the power of darkness. Then they seized him and they led him away, bringing him into the high priest's house. And Peter was following at a distance. He was willing to die with Jesus on his terms. I will die by the sword right here with you, Jesus. But he never figured on having to die by crucifixion. He never figured on having to be locked up for months and months for hanging out with the guy who had caused insurrection. And now he's not in control anymore. And he's following a ways off. And when they had kindled a fire in the middle of the courtyard and sat down together, Peter sat down among them. Who? The people that just drug off Jesus. Then a servant girl, seeing him as he sat in the light and looking closely at him, said, this man also was with him. But he denied it, saying, woman, I do not know him. By the way, friend, listen to me. You better be real careful about saying what you will do and what you won't do until you're in that situation. We better be real careful about judging other people when we've never walked in their shoes. And a little later, verse 58, someone else saw him and said, you are also one of them. But Peter said, man, I'm not. And after an interval of about an hour, still another insisted, saying, certainly this man also was with him, for he too is a Galilean. He's one of those guys. We ought to get him too. But Peter said, man, I do not know what you're talking about. Another gospel said he cursed when he said it. And immediately while he was still speaking, the rooster crowed. This is the only gospel that records what comes next. Jesus has been in Caiaphas, the high priest's judgment hall, being questioned and questioned and questioned and questioned. And they started abusing him, and they've started slapping him, and they've started mistreating him. And Jesus, I believe, is already bleeding from the nose. And Jesus already has spit running down his face. And Jesus already has had him pulling at his hair. And Jesus is already... And just at the moment that Jesus is coming out, and just at the moment that Peter's saying, I don't know him, and just at the moment that the rooster crows, verse 61, the Lord turned and looked at Peter. If I know anything about Jesus, I don't believe that was a look of condemnation. I believe it was a look of love. Peter, I told you. I told you that I know what's down deep better than you do. I know all about your hurts, your habits, your hang-ups. I know all about your need to control things. I know. And this is what it was going to take to get you where you're going. I love you, right? I prayed for you. The Lord turned and looked at Peter, and Peter remembered the saying of the Lord, how he had said to him, behold, before the rooster crows today, you will deny me 3 times. And Peter went out and he wept bitterly. I've always pictured him running through the streets of Jerusalem, sobbing, head down, tears streaming down his face. He'd have knocked you down in the street if you'd have been there. I wonder if he didn't run back out those gates, back across the little brook Kidron, back up to the Mount of Olives, back up to Gethsemane. I wonder if he didn't get down on his face. Say, oh God, why did I do that? Oh Jesus, how could I do that? And friends, here's the deal. Peter thinks it's over. I'm done. I don't have what it takes. I'm too broken. I'm too busted for him to use me. In the moment where I could stand with him or not, I denied him. Surely he can never use me again. Surely this is it. He's a broken man. This thing took him and shook him hard. And while his faith hadn't failed, his pride had, his self-confidence had, his sense of control had. The devil had shaken him hard. And Peter's faith didn't fall through, but all that stuff, all that cancer, all that tumor did. I remember watching a movie here some time ago. It was the story of the Exodus. It might even been called Exodus, with Christian Bale playing Moses. And some things I liked about the movie, some things I didn't care for. But there was one scene in there where Moses had this sword that when he'd been the adopted son of Pharaoh, he'd been given this sword. It symbolized all of Egypt's power and all that Moses was going to be and all of the dream of this notoriety and fame and wealth and all. He had this sword. And even when he went against Pharaoh and joined the Hebrews and led them out of bondage and all that, he kept this sword by his side. And there's this scene in the movie when he's brought them right to the edge of the Red Sea. And God didn't tell him what he was going to do. He said, just go to the edge of the Red Sea. And Moses is there, and they're camping for the night. And all the people are murmuring and talking. And this guy brought us out to get us killed. And Moses has no idea what he's going to do. They're here in this geographical cul-de-sac. And Pharaoh's going to come soon and kill them all. And Moses is sitting there, and he's up. Everybody else is sleeping, and he's awake. And he says, God, I don't know what to do. And what are you going to do with me? I don't know. I'm not who I thought I was. I'm not who I thought I was. Listen to me. God may have you at the point where you're saying, I'm not who I thought I was. God will bring you to the point where you'll say, I'm not who I thought I was. And he takes out that sword that symbolizes all that he wanted to be, and he throws it out into the Red Sea, and the sword goes up, and it sinks down into the waters, and it sticks in the soil there at the bottom of those waters. And the sea starts parting. Sometimes, friend, you can't get all of Jesus you want till he's all you got. And Peter, who says, it's over, Jesus is saying, oh, Peter, it's only just begun. What I'm doing in you feels like death, but I'm telling you it's going to bring life. What I'm doing in you feels like the end, but I'm telling you it's the beginning. Peter, I told you to trust me, and you forgot what I prayed. I said, Satan has demanded to have you that he may sift you like wheat, but I've prayed for you that your faith won't fail. And when, not if, when you get turned around, you go strengthen your brothers. And you're going to strengthen them like you never have before. Because now, you're not living life like this, you're living life like this. I want to ask you today, some of you, the why has turned you against this whole notion of Jesus Christ and the faith. And you may be here today because you're doing a friend a favor. You may be here today because a family member invited you, maybe even to one of the baptisms. You're here today to be kind to somebody, but really all this business, not so much. And maybe it's because sometime a long time ago, you felt like God let you down or you let God down. And I'm telling you, friend, listen, He won't do it like you think He's going to do it. But the same God that wanted to do surgery on Peter's heart is the same God that sent His own Son to get brutalized on a cross. Because it was only after the cross that there came the crown. Only after the death that there came the life. I want to ask you today, let me suggest something to you today, that maybe you're not here by accident. And let me suggest something to you today, that maybe it's time in your life to really settle in and start truly asking if Jesus is who He said He is. To give it an honest hearing. To pray a little prayer like this: God, if you're real, and I don't know if you are, and Jesus Christ, if you're real, and I don't know if you are, and you came to die for sinners, and you came to bring me back to God, I don't know if any of that's true, but I'm asking you to show yourself to me. And if you do, I will give you my life. Would you pray that prayer? For a bunch of us that are Christians, listen, you're in a season of life and it is so hard and it makes no sense. And we want it to be like a fortune cookie, right? We crack it open, pull out the deal, and it's like, oh, that's why I was going through this. He had to do this to build me here. He had to do this to save my kids. You know what? Sometimes in life, we don't get that. And you may be here today thinking, God, what in the world are you doing? I don't know exactly what He's doing, but I do know one thing. When life is shaking you hard, Jesus is perfecting your faith. Maybe today's the day you once again need to undo that white knuckle grip and lift your hands up to Jesus when we sing in a minute and say, Lord, not my will, but yours be done. You're going to have to give me grace to go through this. Finally, you may be here today, listen, and you want to be used by God, and you have all these dreams of what He's going to do and all these dreams of what you're going to do for Him, and that's beautiful and that's good and that's fine, but I want to tell you something. It all begins with you saying, Lord, I want you to write the script for my life because I'm going to get it wrong. And when you do, friend, He will.